Planning to make him party leader if David Cameron fails to win a majority at the election. And staying with the general election, the Home Secretary is warning that Britain could face its biggest constitutional crisis since the abdication of Edward VIII if Labour comes into power with the backing of the Scottish National Party. Well, the man hoping to lead that party in Westminster has been described as both a pickpocket and a puppet master. And earlier this week, Salmond laughed off a video which showed him joking that he'd be writing the next Labour budget. And he joins me now from Aberdeenshire. And a very good morning to you, Mr. Salmond. You better respond to those charges. Then you're the milk tray man, it seems, picking the English pocket. And also, your party's liable to cause a constitutional crisis.
Well, I think the best thing to do is to laugh at this Tory campaign. I actually thought I looked a bit like remember the man in the Black Magic adverts all these years ago, you know, debonair, dashing, dressed in black. I think you and I are just about old enough to remember that. But this stuff, I mean, from Theresa May about the worst constitutional crisis since 1936, I mean, has she forgotten the Second World War, or more recently the illegal war in Iraq, which the Labour Party and the Conservatives dragged this country into, for goodness sake? The woman's overwrought, as indeed is David Cameron. We've got a Prime Minister, can't remember the name of his football team, and a Home Secretary who's becoming a social media parody. There's whole sites going up making fun of Theresa May's panic and desperation. So the best thing to do, and this applies not just in Scotland, but right across the country, is to start laughing at this Conservative campaign.
Let's talk about what the SNP does then with however many seats you get. The people of Scotland voted against independence. You've accepted that. You are now saying, as the SNP, it's our duty then to get you the best deal we can within the United Kingdom. Isn't there a danger for the SNP, though, that you do very well at that and the people of Scotland come to like that situation and want it to stay as it is, that link with the UK?
Well, I think what people in Scotland understand is it's going to be a good thing for Scotland to have a strong group of Scottish National Party MPs. But as Nicola Sturgeon has been brilliantly laying out in this campaign, it's going to be a good thing for those who believe in progressive politics across the UK, people who want an increase rather than a decrease in public spending, people who care about the health service, the education system right across these islands. I know that's why the SNP campaign has such momentum, because we're putting forward a positive, inspiring vision as opposed to this nonsense from the Conservative Party and a pretty negative campaign from the Labour Party as well. I mean, the politics is about inspiring people. Now, your point about won't people be happy, you know, we're in an interesting situation where the stars are coming to alignment, and a group of Scottish MPs, of SNP MPs, could have a substantial influence in the House of Commons. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often, and people know that the way you can guarantee to always get a government of your choice in Scotland, every election, is to have an independent Scotland. So people understand the difference between having influence for the benefit of Scotland, for the aid of progressive politics across the UK in this election, and a situation where an independent Scotland would bring about, where you always got the government of your choice.
But that's the point, isn't it? I mean, and you mentioned there the Labour attack as well, and Gordon Brown was out on the stump the other day, wasn't he, warning about SNP chaos and constant crisis, he said you would cause in Westminster. And he's got a point, hasn't he, that it's in the SNP's interests that you are thwarted in some of the demands you make for Scotland, so you can go back to the people of Scotland and say, there you go, it doesn't work for us in the United Kingdom, we have to have another go at independence.
Yeah, Gordon should know better, of course, but what a contrast that the pictures made yesterday. I mean, Gordon speaking to a tiny meeting of Labour activists, and Nicola Sturgeon addressing thousands of women in the streets of Glasgow in a positive, inspiring way. I mean, this is the real contrast between the campaigns. You know, why is the SNP surging again in the opinion polls this morning? It's because our message stands in contrast to everything everybody else is hearing, with the exception, of course, of Leanne Wood and Plaid Cymru and the Green Party in England, who are also trying to fight positive campaigns. But that positive, inspiring message to these thousands of women in the street of Glasgow, that's what moves people into politics, not these doom-laden, alarmist wanderings, whether they come from Theresa May or Gordon Brown.
And just tell us this, Mr. Salmond, about another referendum. I'm not going to ask you when, because we none of us know, do we? You've said, your leaders said, all SNP representatives say, it will be when the people of Scotland Scotland decide there should be another referendum, well, how do they signal that desire?
Well, remember these leadership debates a long time ago when everybody agreed with Nick. Now we all agree with Nicola, and Nicola's laid this out extremely well. She's pointed out that you can only have another referendum on independence when the people of Scotland vote for a party or parties which put that in their manifesto for a Scottish election. So the Westminster election is about getting more power and influence for Scotland and helping people across the UK in terms of progressive politics. That's what this election's about. You'd have to have a situation in a future Scottish election where people voted for a party or parties pledged to hold an independence referendum. And that is why it's the people of Scotland who'll decide if and when there's another independence referendum.
So all we need to do is put a date on it, Mr. Salmond. You're talking about next year and the Scottish parliamentary elections, and the SNP, no doubt, will put that in their manifesto.
Well, that's entirely a matter for Nicola Sturgeon, and she's made it clear you'd have to have a substantial change in circumstances, and when asked what it might be, she gave the example of perhaps Scotland being dragged out of the European Union against the wishes of the Scottish people, and she's put forward a solution to avoid that happening, of course, and that is to say any such referendum that was held would have to have a majority in the component parts of the United Kingdom, that's Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England, since we're all meant to be equal partners in the United Kingdom. And one of the things that's motivating people to vote SNP in Scotland, I think Julia Hartley-Brewer earlier on in your programme put her finger on this, that only a few months ago we were told by the Tory and Labour parties they wanted Scotland to play a big role in the Parliament of the United Kingdom as an equal partner. Now it looks, when we're going to play a big role, that Cameron and May and all these people are saying, oh no, we didn't realise you meant that big, and saying somehow SNP and Scottish MPs will be illegitimate and not be on the same basis as everyone else in the House of Commons. That's really irritating people in Scotland. And it may, if they keep on in this campaign incident, that eternal argument about the number of pandas and the number of Tory MPs in Scotland, if they're not very careful, then that will be settled 2-0 in favour of the pandas.
OK, Mr. Salmond, thank you very much indeed, Alex Salmond there in Aberdeenshire.